When Nicko McBrain first sat behind Iron Maiden's drum kit, he felt like he was stepping into a legend. The band had already built a massive name with the Number of the Beast, and replacing Clive Burr wasn't going to be easy. The pressure was enormous. Every fan was watching, every critic ready to judge. Nicko wasn't new to music. He had played in bands before, touring clubs and small venues, but Iron Maiden was a different beast entirely. Their energy, their precision, everything was bigger, louder, and faster. From the very first rehearsal, Nicko knew he had to prove himself. Steve Harris, the band's perfectionist bassist and leader, demanded tightness and discipline. Bruce Dickinson wanted thunder behind his soaring voice, and the twin guitar attack of Dave Murray and Adrian Smith required absolute control. Nicko hit the drums hard, smiling like a madman, hiding his nerves behind humor. But inside, he was terrified of making a mistake. This was his dream, and his nightmare, rolled into one. That night, after the first rehearsal, he lay awake in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling. One wrong move, he thought, and I'm out. He knew Iron Maiden didn't forgive sloppiness. Little did he know, one moment during the recording of their next album would push him to the edge, a moment when he truly believed he was about to lose it all. Joining Iron Maiden was like being thrown into a storm. The pace was insane. Nicko had barely learned the songs before the band was already preparing to record Peace of Mind. The studio was a battlefield of sound. Producer Martin Birch demanded precision. Steve Harris would listen to every single drum hit, pointing out the slightest inconsistency. For Nicko, it was both thrilling and terrifying. "I thought I was a good drummer," Nicko later said. "But Maiden made me realize what good really meant." The sessions were long, the nights even longer. Nicko was still trying to adjust to their style. Those fast gallops, intricate transitions, and constant tempo shifts. He played with energy, but sometimes that same energy made him too wild. Steve's face would tighten when Nicko went offbeat. Bruce would look over the glass window with a raised eyebrow. Nicko could feel it, the tension in the room. He'd laugh it off, but inside, he wondered if he was losing their trust. When Where Eagles Dare came together, Nicko gave one of his most iconic performances. Yet even after the take, he wasn't sure if it was enough. He'd seen musicians come and go. In Iron Maiden, one wrong note could change everything. And as the band moved toward their biggest tours, Nicko began to sense something strange. Whispers, glances, and the feeling that maybe someone thought he didn't belong. Nicko was known for his big grin. Fans loved his happy energy behind the drums, the way he made heavy metal look fun. But behind that smile, there was fear. He'd hear little things during rehearsals. "That fills too much," or "keep it tighter next time." Small comments, but they cut deep. He wanted so badly to impress everyone that every criticism felt like a warning. He started second-guessing himself. He'd stay late after rehearsals, practicing fills alone while roadies packed up. He'd tap rhythms on tables, his knees, even his pillow at night, trying to make everything perfect. But perfection in Iron Maiden was a moving target. Steve Harris had a vision, and it was precise. One day, during a rehearsal for The Trooper, Steve stopped playing mid-song. He looked directly at Nicko and said, "That's not the groove I want." The room went silent. Nicko felt his stomach drop. Bruce broke the tension with a joke, but Nicko couldn't laugh. That night he called his wife and said quietly, "I think I've messed up. I don't know if I'll last into his band." He didn't realize that this fear, this constant pressure, would eventually lead to the moment he thought he was finished for good. It happened during the Power Slave sessions. The band had grown massive. World tours, endless interviews, magazine covers, but inside the stress was mounting. Nicko was exhausted. They'd been touring for months, and the studio felt like a pressure cooker. The band's standards were higher than ever, and one day, Nicko hit the wall. They were recording Aces High. Nicko was struggling to lock in the right feel. After multiple takes, Steve Harris slammed his bass down. "We can't keep doing this," he shouted. Nicko froze. The room went silent again. Martin Birch sighed heavily through the talkback mic. Bruce left the room without a word. Nicko's heart was pounding. "That's it," he thought. I've blown it." He left the drum kit and walked outside. For the first time, his confidence was gone. He sat on the curb, staring at the ground, thinking of all the gigs he'd played to get here and how it might all end in one bad day. But fate had other plans. A few hours later, Steve came outside. "You're one of us," he said quietly. "Just play like you." It was a small moment, but it changed everything. Nicko went back in, sat behind the kit, and nailed the take. Still, the fear of being fired never completely left him. After that emotional breakdown during Power Slave, things slowly began to settle. Nicko learned something vital that day. Iron Maiden wasn't just about perfection, it was about chemistry. Steve's words echoed in his mind. "Play like you." It gave him freedom. He stopped overthinking every beat and started trusting his instincts again. When the band hit the road for the World Slavery Tour, Nicko became a powerhouse. He was unstoppable, driving the band every night through songs like 2 Minutes to Midnight and Run to the Hills. Fans could feel it. They didn't see fear behind the drums anymore. They saw fire. But even with renewed confidence, the pressure was always there. Each show felt like a test. Iron Maiden had built their empire on precision and discipline, and Nicko knew one bad night could destroy that image. Still, he laughed more. He joked backstage, pulled pranks on Bruce, and even earned the nickname Nicko the Clown. Yet deep inside, he remembered those tense moments in the studio, the silence after a mistake, the looks, the feeling of being judged. He promised himself never to get that close to the edge again. But as Maiden prepared for one of their most ambitious albums, somewhere in time, Nicko would once again find himself under pressure. Not from others, but from the rise of technology that threatened to change everything he loved about drumming. By the mid-1980s, music was changing fast. Electronic drums, sequencers, and digital recording were everywhere. Bands were experimenting with machines that never made mistakes. Iron Maiden, though loyal to their roots, started to feel the pull of modernization. When Somewhere in Time began production, synthesizers entered the picture, and Nicko hated it. He feared losing the human touch. "A machine can't swing," he said. "It can't feel the push and pull of real music." But in the studio, precision was everything. Martin Birch wanted tighter timing, almost mechanical perfection. Nicko's natural groove, that subtle swing that made his playing unique, was being ironed out. He felt like he was battling a computer instead of playing drums. Some nights, he'd replay the same section over and over until his arms went numb. He'd leave the studio drenched in sweat, convinced that the band might prefer a drum machine to him. That thought haunted him. What if they don't need me anymore? Of course, the band never said that. But when technology starts replacing feel, even the best musicians begin to question their worth. Nicko didn't realize that this silent fear of being replaced, of not being good enough, would come crashing back later in the darkest moment of his career. Iron Maiden's tours were legendary. Endless nights, roaring crowds, and exhaustion that never ended. Nicko loved performing, but the travel, pressure, and perfectionism began taking a toll. There were nights when his hands bled, his back ached, and yet he had to go out and deliver a flawless performance. Fans saw a smiling madman behind the kit. They didn't see the pain or the doubt. During one European leg, a show in Germany went wrong. Technical issues, monitor failures, chaos. Nicko struggled to hear the band. He missed a cue. After the show, no one said a word. Silence hung heavy backstage. Bruce was pacing. Steve was quiet. Nicko sat alone, wondering if that mistake would be the one that cost him his place. That night, he called home again. "Maybe I'm not as good as I thought," he said softly. But something inside him refused to quit. He walked back into rehearsal the next day and played like his life depended on it, because in his heart it did. And that fierce determination, that refusal to break, would later define him as one of the most respected drummers in heavy metal. By the late 80s, Iron Maiden was unstoppable on the outside but quietly divided inside. Tensions grew. Exhaustion, musical disagreements, and egos colliding after years of non-stop touring. Nicko often became the peacekeeper, cracking jokes to ease the tension, but even he could sense something was changing. Steve wanted more control. Bruce was exploring new ideas. Adrian was growing restless. Nicko just wanted to play drums, but he felt caught in the middle. During the Seventh Son of a Seventh Son sessions, Nicko began to notice subtle looks again, moments where Steve and Martin Birch would whisper after a take. Too loose, someone would say. Nicko's heart would sink. Was history repeating itself? He worked harder, practicing till dawn, determined not to give anyone a reason to doubt him. But he couldn't shake the paranoia. The success of the album didn't erase the tension, and as Iron Maiden moved into the 1990s, a decade that would nearly break them, Nicko's old fear of being fired would return stronger than ever. When Bruce Dickinson left Iron Maiden in 1993, the band's world changed overnight. Fans were furious. Critics doubted their survival. Nicko, loyal as ever, stayed. But deep down, he wondered if the magic was fading. With Blaze Bayley stepping in as vocalist, the dynamic felt unfamiliar. The chemistry that had fueled Maiden for years was gone. The X Factor sessions were dark, both musically and emotionally. Steve Harris was struggling personally. The mood was heavy. Nicko tried to lift spirits, but the songs were slower, moodier, far from the galloping energy he loved. He started questioning his place again. "I felt like I wasn't contributing the same way," he said later. "I wasn't sure if I was what they needed anymore." The band wasn't firing him, but he could feel the distance. And when critics slammed the new direction, Nicko began wondering if his time in Maiden was coming to an end after all. Touring with Blaze was hard. The crowds were smaller, the atmosphere heavier. Nicko still played with passion, but the excitement wasn't the same. He noticed Steve withdrawing into himself, focusing on keeping the band alive. There was no laughter backstage anymore. One night after a show, Nicko overheard a conversation. Something about changes for the next tour. His heart sank. He couldn't sleep. Maybe they'll bring in a new drummer, he thought. Someone who fits the new sound better. It was déjà vu, the same fear that had haunted him years ago. But instead of waiting, Nicko decided to confront it. He went straight to Steve. "If you're not happy with me," he said, "tell me straight. I can take it." Steve looked at him and shook his head. "Nick, you're family. You're not going anywhere." Those words lifted a weight from his shoulders, at least for a while. But the real turning point would come when Bruce returned, and Nicko's world flipped again. In 1999, Bruce Dickinson and Adrian Smith rejoined Iron Maiden. It was a rebirth. The band was complete again. Nicko couldn't believe it. "It felt like coming home," he said. The energy returned, the laughter came back, and the music felt alive again. But with that joy came a new challenge. The bar was higher than ever. The reunion album Brave New World had to prove that Iron Maiden still ruled. Nicko poured everything into his drumming. He worked tirelessly, pushing himself past exhaustion. He wanted to make sure no one ever doubted his place again. Yet even as the band's popularity exploded once more, that small voice inside him whispered, "Don't slip. Don't make a mistake. Don't give them a reason." For Nicko, that fear never truly died. It just lived quietly behind the smile, hidden beneath every thunderous drum roll. As years passed, Iron Maiden became legends. Massive tours, sold-out arenas, and generations of fans screaming their name. But fame can be lonely. Between flights, hotels, and endless shows, Nicko sometimes felt detached. He'd walk into his hotel room after a concert, the roar of the crowd still echoing, and wonder if anyone really understood what it cost to keep the machine running. He had everything he dreamed of, yet he still feared losing it. Sometimes, before a show, he'd look at his drums and remember that first moment. The fear of getting fired. It still gave him butterflies, but instead of anxiety, it now gave him purpose. "Every night I play like it's my last," he'd say. And maybe that's what kept Iron Maiden alive for so long. The fear, the hunger, and the love for music that never faded. There was a moment during the Book of Souls sessions when it all came full circle. Nicko messed up a take, nothing serious, just a timing slip. He laughed, expecting Steve to say something, but Steve just smiled and said, "Don't worry, mate, we've got all day." It hit him like a wave. Decades earlier, that same mistake would have sent him spiraling into panic. Now, it was just part of the process. He realized then, he wasn't the scared newcomer anymore. He was Iron Maiden's heartbeat. All those years of fear, sweat, and doubt had built something stronger: trust. Today, Nicko talks about Iron Maiden like a family, one that fought, argued, doubted, and yet always came back stronger. He remembers the moments he thought he'd be fired, and laughs. "I was young, insecure, and scared out of my mind," he says, "but that fear made me work harder than ever." Each scar, each sleepless night, each moment of silence in the studio, they were all part of his journey. Iron Maiden's success wasn't just about riffs or lyrics, it was about 5 men who refused to give up on each other. Now in his 70s, Nicko McBrain still walks on stage with that same grin. His hands may ache, his body may slow, but his spirit is untouchable. He survived every doubt, every near miss, every sleepless night of fear. And in the end, he realized something powerful. Iron Maiden never wanted perfection. They wanted Nicko, the man behind the madness, the laughter behind the thunder, the heartbeat of heavy metal. When he plays now, every hit echoes that early fear, and every cheer reminds him that he never got fired, because he never stopped believing.